Cyberpunk 2077. Probably one of the most controversial and polarizing games on the market. And for a good reason. There's a lot to love about this game, and a lot to hate. But in order to fully understand Cyberpunk, we're gonna have to go back. Way back. April 14th, 1954, in Santa Cruz, California, a little boy named Michael Allen Pondsmith is born. As a child, he would often design games of his own, but it was not until college that he was first introduced to the concept of pen and paper role-playing games, after a friend of his got a copy of Dungeons & Dragons. Michael was very much interested in the gameplay mechanics, but not so much in the fantasy setting. Eventually, Pondsmith went to work in the game industry as a graphic designer, and went on to design his first game from the ground up, called Mekton. The success of Mekton convinced Pondsmith that he could make a business out of game design, and so he founded R. Talsorian Games in 1985, where he would publish several role-playing games, including Teenagers from Outer Space, Mekton 2, and eventually Cyberpunk, the role-playing game of the dark future, set in an alternate timeline diverging from our own around the 1990s. The world finds itself in the midst of an economic crisis, filled with proxy wars, trade wars, brief nuclear exchanges, along with some good old-fashioned biological warfare. Naturally, this led to a gradual decline of Western civilization and the collapse of most governments. In the chaos and sudden vacuum of power, corporations decide to step in as a form of authority, with many corporations becoming even more powerful than the countries they're housed in, meaning that they now make their own laws. So, with those pesky regulations, ethics laws, and universal human rights out of the way, corporations are free to expand on and improve technology without limitation, leading to technological innovations such as cybernetic implants and enhancements. The first edition of Cyberpunk consisted of 3 booklets: Friday Night Firefight, View from the Edge, and Welcome to Night City. This was the holy trinity that created the gameplay of Cyberpunk, with Friday Night Firefight covering the combat system, View from the Edge covering all aspects of characters and character creation, and Welcome to Night City covering the world and lore of Cyberpunk. Later editions, and even a sequel titled Cyberpunk 2020, added a variety of extra booklets, which introduced things such as new character classes, the ability to go to Earth orbit, along with new rules for zero-G combat, and various other weapons, world building, and lore booklets. Pondsmith and his team at R. Talsorian Games had approached the idea of doing a Cyberpunk video game numerous times before, but they wanted it done right. They wanted to find someone who was enough of a fan of the world and the game to not want to go and change it around, or to just stick the label of Cyberpunk on it and then go do something completely different. So when CDPR approached Pondsmith and his team, they very quickly realized that these guys were fans. They knew the material, they knew the world, and they were quoting things back to Pondsmith that even he had forgotten. He knew that these were the right people for the project, so he accepted their proposal and also worked very closely with CDPR throughout the development of Cyberpunk 2077. So, with the original game's creator and one of the most well-renowned game developers working on this project, Cyberpunk 2077 was bound to be a success. The amount of hype and anticipation for this game was through the roof, until the game actually released to very mixed reviews. To find out what went wrong and what went right, we're going to take a look at this game in a few categories, starting with the combat is actually pretty good. Really good, in fact. There are so many different playstyles you can go for, depending on how you use your perk points. I'm talking stealth builds, speed builds, hacking builds, melee builds, or even my personal favorite, where you put all your perk points into pistol damage and headshot damage so you can go around and one-tap everyone. During actual combat, there's such a huge degree of things that you can do. You can give yourself wall hacks. You can throw a grenade and then shoot that grenade midair. You can hack into an enemy and literally force them to commit suicide. You can shank a guy and then throw your knife at another guy. You can go slow motion mode, and you can even get guns that are literal aimbots, so you don't even have to aim, and you can just shoot around corners. All this would create the perfect combat system if it weren't for the fact that the AI is absolute doggy doo-doo. I mean, it feels like they only wrote 2 lines of code for these guys. Even on the hardest difficulty, the AI makes this game so easy. Another thing that really bothers me is the actual weapons. So the way that the game works is that as you level up and progress through the game, the difficulty is increased just by ramping up enemy health by a lot. So to counteract this, you end up finding more and more powerful guns. And it's not like it's a new gun that's a superior model with higher caliber bullets. No, it's literally just the same gun, but then with more damage. The scaling gets so ridiculous that the guns at the end of the game literally have 50 times the DPS of guns that you'll find at the beginning of the game. And this really sucks because you might find a really cool gun and you might want to use it for the rest of your playthrough, but then a couple of hours of gameplay later, it has become completely obsolete because it feels like you're shooting a goddamn water gun at your enemies. And then there's the stealth. Like, what the fuck? Literally, just look at this shit. I'm standing right next to this guy and he can't see me. But okay, for the sake of gameplay, I can understand. You want to restrict the enemy field of view to make it a bit easier to sneak around enemies. Okay, understandable. But then look at this shit. Like, what the fuck? We're in a world where everybody's got cybernetically enhanced ocular implants and nervous systems. So compared to us regular humans, they should be cracked out of their fucking minds. And I'm supposed to believe that this guy can't see me. Really. And by the way, this is with 0 stealth rated perk points and on the hardest difficulty. And the thing is, there's this really cool mechanic where you can hack into lights or radios or power generators and etc. to distract enemies, or hack into the enemy themselves and disable their ocular implants to blind them for a few seconds. But the thing is, you almost never have to use these mechanics because you can literally just walk past everyone. But this guy not seeing me, it's not even the worst part. The worst part is that the same shit applies to cameras, goddamn digital machines. Like maybe you could make the argument that this guy just wasn't paying attention and that's why he doesn't instantly detect us. But a fucking camera. Like somehow the algorithm's like, this mysterious figure was only clearly visible in my line of sight for 2 seconds, rather than the minimum required of 3. Must have been the wind. No need to raise the alarms. Now, I do realize that for the purpose of gameplay, you need to be able to check corners without being instantly detected. And that, of course, comes at the cost of immersion and realism. But what if I told you that we can have the gameplay and the immersion too? Because we're in the world of Cyberpunk, where we've got brain-to-computer interfaces. So why not have like a little controllable robot with a camera that you can deploy to scout out an area? Or have like a cybernetic implant where you have an extendable miniature camera on your hand that you can use to peek around corners. That way we can make the AI actually detect us, and then so we're forced to use these really cool stealth mechanics, and stealth becomes a lot more fun. I gotta say, the game might be buggy as hell and unfinished, but the art department at CDPR knocked it out of the fucking park. Honestly, I think a great chunk, if not the majority, of my enjoyment from this game came from me just driving around and exploring the city. I was around halfway through the main questline when I found out that fast traveling was a thing. And even after I found that out, I pretty much never used it, because the city's just too beautiful to use fast travel. I mean, just driving in the city on a rainy night, where you can see the neon lights refracting through the rain droplets rolling down your window, there's just nothing quite like it. In my opinion, Night City is by far the most beautiful game environment that I've ever experienced. You may have noticed in these clips that I have the minimap turned off, and that's because I didn't want to use the in-game GPS. I honestly just preferred getting lost and trying to find my own way around the city. There's so much detail and atmosphere in this world, and not only is Night City a visually gorgeous environment, but it also captures what Cyberpunk is really all about. It's the rainy wet streets, nights with fog rolling in, cars, faceless people going by, doing the things that they're doing. The aura of mystery. There's something almost hypnotic about it. The cyberpunk world is a world where people have this magnificent technology, but it doesn't fundamentally change the fact that there's a lot of treacherous and nasty behavior and greed. And that's what cyberpunk's all about. It's about the interface between people and technology, but not in a way where it's all about the technology changing or improving them. It's how the street finds its use for things. You see, cyberpunk is not about saving humanity, it's about saving yourself. And Night City really captures this idea perfectly. You can see it in every nook and cranny of the street. The crackheads, high out of their minds, sleeping in tunnels and streets. Gang shootouts around every corner. The chaotic layout of the city, with massive corporate high-rises built above roads and highways. Your own home, one of the countless apartments squeezed into this giant complex called a mega building, where elevators aren't working and corridors are eroded and messy. The view out of your apartment window, where you can see a fancy luxurious penthouse, and the fact that there's a goddamn vending machine in your own house. Night City may be visually beautiful and detailed, but it isn't logistically detailed. If you follow around an NPC, then you'll find that they walk aimlessly in one direction, and then eventually they turn around and walk in the opposite direction. If you park your car even slightly on the street, then the traffic AI doesn't know how to drive around it. You know how in GTA 5, you can have fun just by driving around, causing havoc, and seeing how the world reacts and events unfold. I mean, that's where most of the fun in GTA is. But in Cyberpunk, you can't really do that. If you shoot a gun, then NPCs go into this dumbass cower animation, and they just sit there doing nothing. If you commit a crime and get a star, then instead of driving to your location, police will just randomly spawn right in front of you. At this point, you can do two things. You can either fight the police and watch your star count increase, and have endless hordes of cops spawn right next to you until you eventually die. Or you can just get in your car and drive away. And then the stars are gone. No car chase, no action, nothing. I mean, in this one clip, I didn't even have to drive away. I just ran a few steps away and my star disappeared. See, Night City, it feels more like a hub which you use to travel in between quests, rather than an interactive sandbox environment. I mean, granted, it's a very beautiful, detailed and intricate hub, but still a hub nevertheless. The quest design is one aspect where I honestly have very little complaints. The main quest line is really good, and some of the side quests are even better. The biggest problem I have with the quests is how you receive most of the side quests. So whenever you walk past a certain area where you've never been before, you might get a call from some random fucking guy called a fixer asking you to do a mission somewhere in the area. And the thing is, whenever you get a call, there's this little prompt saying, press T to answer. But if you don't press T, then the phone just picks up automatically either way, so there's literally no way that you can hang up. One side effect of the system is that if you just want to explore the city, then you'll get bombarded with these random quests that you don't give a shit about. And so your quest log is filled with a bunch of these quests that you've forgotten the context to. So it turns into this checklist where I'm not really immersed in these quests and I'm just trying to get them checked off of a list. The quest system would be so much better if you got quests by going out and looking for them, rather than the game just dumping them onto you. I wish you could get more quests by finding a random NPC on the street and talking to them, or that instead of fixers randomly calling you to offer you a job, you'd either have to visit them or call them for the job. Another complaint is that a lot of the quests you receive from fixers are extremely generic. You'll get some shit like, oh, go here and kill this guy, or go here and steal this thing. And it feels like a lot of these quests are generic filler, made to squeeze in some extra content into the game. This isn't to say that these quests are necessarily bad, because they do give you something to do and a reason to do so. It's just that these filler quests pale in comparison to the side quests that actually have some thought put into them. I mean, some of these quests can get absolutely wild and add so much character to the world. To give you an idea of what I mean, there's this one quest where a self-driving car AI got corrupted, became depressed and suicidal, and so you have to convince him not to kill himself. And then there's my hands down 10 out of 10 favorite masterpiece of a quest. So you meet this guy, and he's a little bit fucked in the head. So much so that he's convinced himself that he's the second coming of Christ. So he's like, hey bro, yeah, what's up? Can you crucify me? Yeah, sure, no problem.
We're punt.
And then there's the main quest line, which is just very nice. It takes you across a wide variety of different places in Night City, and the story itself is extremely compelling. It also has like 5 different endings. At the end of my first playthrough, I made some regrettable decisions, and I got a bad ending, and the game really made me feel like I fucked up. And the ending credits rolling just had me like... There are also these certain quest lines centered around a specific side character, where you do things with them, help them out, and get to know the character better. These quest lines are also really high quality and give you a deeper, more personal look into the world and society of Cyberpunk. You can also choose to fuck most of these people, which is cool, I guess. It's the little things that are important in a game. And there's this little thing that I love about Cyberpunk. There are these data pads that you can find all over the place. They contain text about certain topics that are a delight to read. They can cover a wide variety of topics and introduce you to the lore of Cyberpunk. For example, there's this one data pad explaining the medical condition of cyberpsychosis, which is where you lose your mind due to excessive cybernetic implants. Or they can contain a short story, like this one about a detective who slowly realizes that he's lost his mind due to cyberpsychosis, and that he's investigating a murder that he committed. Or they can even contain helpful little guides, such as this one titled Get High at Home, although for some reason this guide stops abruptly before getting to the main topic. But there's also the little things that I hate about Cyberpunk. After you buy a car, you can't customize it at all. And after you've made your character, you can't customize them either. Throughout the game, you hear about how people can completely replace their face, their hair, their eyes, their limbs, and even get a custom chrome skin. But you can't do any of that. You can't even get a fucking haircut. You can have an apartment, but there's no reason to go there, since there's pretty much nothing to do there. And you can't customize it either. Also, there's the fact that you can loot everything you see without repercussions. You can drink bottles of liquor that you find in a bar, and you can even take money that you just see lying around, and nobody gives a shit. Most of these issues are due to the fact that Cyberpunk is pretty much unfinished, and they will undoubtedly get fixed in future patches. But with that being said, is Cyberpunk worth it right now? Well, despite its shortcomings and lack of polish, I personally really enjoyed my experience with the game. I've sunk over 100 hours into this game, and I've enjoyed at least 85% of that time. Now, with that being said, objectively, if you want to play this game, then I'm sure you'll have a much better experience by waiting a year or so for CDPR to patch the game, fix all the bugs, and polish up the features. Alternatively, if you don't want to wait for CDPR to patch the game, you can do it yourself. This game's been out for just under a year, and it's already on the front page of Nexus Mods, with over 2,400 mods and an extremely active modding community that keeps pumping out new content every single day. There's mods that fix bugs, mods that actually balance the game properly, mods that add a functional police chase system, mods that let you customize your vehicle, mods that let you customize your character, e-girl mod, climate change mod, dog mod, anime mod, leg mod, apartment mod. I mean, the difference between modded and vanilla is night and day. You can fix like at least 50% of the issues I brought up in this video, which lets you actually enjoy the good parts of the game without the bad parts getting in your way. It makes me wonder why CDPR doesn't just hire these guys to fix their game for them. Oh wait, they are. Huh. Nice. The only downside to modding the game is that You'll spend several hours meticulously crafting the perfect gaming experience, only to have a new patch come out and then none of your mods work anymore, so you have to start all over again. Overall, it's a pretty good game. I give it a 5 out of 7.